Hello everybody, it's Yaa Yaa here again with another video. And if I'm going to be honest, it feels so strange to be sitting over here talking to you guys. I have been doing so many voiceovers for my last few videos and I have been gone for a bit, so it does feel so strange getting back into the whole swing of things. But you know, I said I'm not going to leave you guys hanging this time around. So I get tons and tons of DMs, messages, questions in real life about how to grow your natural hair. Like how you can get the nice inches, the length, what it is that I do, and everything in between. So today I've decided we're going to finally, address that question, how to get long natural hair. And I hope you've come here willing to learn and willing to do the work, because listen, maintaining natural hair, I'm not going to say it's hard, but you have to have some dedication and you've got to have some time and you've got to want to make it work for it to work. So if you are interested, just stay tuned and we're going to get right into it. Number one, this depends. So there's usually 3 different stages. It's either you're at one of these points. It's either you've been natural your whole life and you want to kind of, get into the swing of things and finally learn how to grow your hair. Number 2, you have just started being natural. So you've not got any other relaxed hair, but your hair is slightly shorter and you're getting into the mix of things. Or number 3, you are relaxed and you are literally trying to see whether or not you want to, take the plunge and start doing your natural hair. My first thing that I'm going to say, first tip is put the heat away. And when I say heat, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to try my best to, separate it. There's good heat and there's bad heat, okay? If you want your natural hair to be in its most natural state, you don't want any heat damage, you don't want any sort of stringy bits, you're going to want to minimize the amount of heat that you use. If you know that you love your straightener and that you want to be able to rock your natural hair, you're going to want to try your best to reduce how much you use it. I don't usually like to tell people what exactly to do, but if we are going to be honest, I would say, like, if you can minimize it to 2 to 3 times a year straightening your hair, I would say that would be like the best thing to do, mainly because your natural hair thrives best in its natural state. When you are using straighteners, you are more likely to get something called heat damage, where your curls or your natural pattern is no longer in its original state and it then becomes straight, stringy, and you start having like really strange patterns in your hair. That is not going to keep your hair nice and healthy. It's actually going to do the opposite of it. You may then notice that with the straightening you're also burning your ends, so you may notice you're getting more split ends, and more split ends means more cutting of the hair, and if you don't cut your hair, you're going to just have the split ends reach all the way to the top and it will damage it. If you are going to be using heat, guys, the best thing to use is a heat protectant. Make sure that whether or not you're straightening your hair or you are going to be using a blow dryer to stretch it, that you use a good heat protectant. I tried out the Joico one this time round. It's a nice, really thick sort of heat protectant and I absolutely loved it. It got my hair really nice and I felt as though it was protected very well. But there's loads of different heat protectors that you can use, and as long as you're using one, that is all that matters. Just make sure that your hair is protected when you're using heat. So there's good heat, as I said, and there's bad heat. A lot of the time it is recommended, especially if you are low porosity. If you want to be doing deep conditions and things like that, you might want to get a heated cap, or you might want to get a hooded dryer, and that is perfect heat because it allows the product to be able to penetrate inside your hair strands and your hair can really get the full benefits of the products that you're using. So heat is not all that bad, guys. It's great, everything is great in moderation, okay? Moderation. You can't have everything at one time, do you know what I mean? Next point, your ends are your friends, okay? And this is going to be so like cliche-ish, but it's so true. Your ends are your oldest parts of your hair. So if you are trying to grow your hair, your scalp is great, perfect, but the oldest parts of your hair is what needs the most care. And the best way to do this is to make sure that you are trimming when necessary. A lot of the time people do ask, how often do I have to trim my hair? And I would never ever personally say do it every 3 months, do it every this and that. I like to just make sure that every once in a while I'm looking at my hair strands and at the ends of my hair, and if I'm starting to see single strand knots or split ends, or my hair starting to knot up a lot, I know that my hair is in need of a trim. So that's usually around like every 4 months, I would say. I check. Doesn't always necessarily mean I'm going to cut, but every 4 months I do check my ends. I may give it a dust where I just cut off a little bit. I know it might sound so strange, but it's important that we are trimming our hair though, guys. You need to make sure that if you want to be able to have the length, you need to be like willing to cut off some parts, because as I mentioned before, split ends are not your friends, and that is why a lot of people might say that their hair is not growing or they can't grow their hair. It's only because their hair is growing at the same rate that their hair is breaking. So when you're brushing your hair and you notice that you've got like short parts and you don't see the bulb from the top of your head, you notice that would be breakage. So if you're seeing quite a bit of that every single time you're brushing your hair, you're going to know that your hair is in need of a trim. And you may see that you've got some length, but if your ends are gappy, there is just no point. You're going to end up losing a lot more hair than you need to if you don't just tackle the problem heads on. You're just going to notice so much breakage, and the breakage eventually, you see the split ends are going to go up your hair strands and eventually reach the root, and you're going to have like jaggedy ends like this. Okay, you don't want that. So trim your ends, because your ends are your friends. Okay, so this one might sound self-explanatory, but it's not. Your hair is like a plant. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're not rough with your hair. What I like to do best is make sure every time I'm detangling my hair is damp or wet. Okay, and that is going to make it easier for your comb or your brush to glide through. My favorite brush at the moment is actually the Tangle teezer, and I will link it down in the description box so you guys can get a hold of that if you do want to have it. It's actually perfect. I feel as though it melts away my tangles and my hair is able to detangle really well without having to, you know, feel the snagging or the breakage. Also, when you're brushing your hair and when you're detangling, you always want to start from the bottom. So you start down from the bottom here and you work your way up. And be gentle with your hair, because it's your hair. Like I said, it's like a plant, it's like a baby. It's so tender that you actually have to treat it tenderly. Natural hair is like magic, but at the same time so fragile. So you need to just make sure that you are being careful with your hair whenever you're doing it. So whenever I wash my hair, for example, I like to part my hair into 4 sections, just making sure that I'm able to really get into there and detangle correctly and wash correctly. So be really gentle with your hair, work down from the bottom all the way to the roots, and you are good to go. Okay, next one, moisture. Moisture. Okay, and a lot of the time, this is where it gets a bit complicated, because a lot of the time people do mistaken butters and oils for moisturizers, and they are not. The most important thing in your hair is moisture, and the main ingredient is actually water. So regardless of whatever texture you've got, whether you're a 4A, 3A or 4C, you need moisture, especially if you're a 4C. A lot of people might think because their hair is shrinking up when they add water to it or add moisture to it, it's going to just cause breakage, or it's going to make the style harder, or just harder to manage. That's actually not the case. When your hair is shrinking up, that means that your hair is healthy. If you're putting water in your hair and it's just staying how it is, that is a sign of damaged hair. You need to be able to find the best sort of moisturizers for your hair. So to moisturize and seal my hair, or to make sure my hair is moisturized, I like to use the Camille Rose Moisture Milk, my absolute fave, with my Seal Afrocentrics oil. Any oil will do, any moisturizer will do, as long as your hair is happy with it. Try your best. I would be honest, I do mine at least once every week. I think whilst the winter months are coming, I'm going to do it a lot more often. But this is exactly what I use to keep my hair moisturized. This is so not sponsored, but if you did want to be able to find out what kind of products are great for you, it's really good to try a subscription box. I did try Treasure Tress, and it's allowed me to understand what kind of products my hair likes. So you don't have to try a subscription box, but you need to be able to know, does it like the sort of thicker butters? Does it like the lighter butters? Does it like no butters at all? Does it prefer oils? You need to try it. It's kind of like a trial and error thing, and when you do find your perfect type of product, it makes the natural hair journey so much easier. That then again relates to hair porosity. So if your hair is of a higher porosity, which means that your hair cuticles don't lay flat and they're sort of lifted, that would mean that you kind of need butters that are slightly heavier, that can really fill in those gaps in those cuticles so that it can lay nice and flat. And you might want to seal that in with a heavier oil, and that's kind of like the best way to go. Personally, I am low porosity, so I like slightly lighter oils and slightly lighter butters, but at the same time, just because you're a certain porosity does not mean that your hair might not like the opposite. My hair sometimes likes a thick moisturizer and a lighter butter or lighter oil. The porosity is a guideline, but it's not the rule. Okay, so this one's kind of for us type 4 girls. It's really good to try your best to keep your hair stretched, and that can be done in loads of different ways. As I mentioned earlier, you can use a blow dryer. I would say try your best again to stay away from using heat way too often, but there are other methods. So you can try banding, you can try doing braid outs, twist outs, stretching, pineapple method. Loads of methods do work. It's just best to keep your hair stretched so that your hair isn't bouncing up and curling over itself. I've got the perfect example. So when I was doing my braids, I left out a piece of hair by accident, and I'm just going to show you guys exactly what happened to this piece of hair that I left out. It's a really thin strand, but I hope you guys can see. Okay, so I left out this strand over here. I'm not sure if you can tell, but it knotted up and curled up on itself, and this has created a knot in my hair where a knot did not need to be. And that's what happens when you don't stretch your hair or you leave your hair to curl up on itself. Try your best to keep your hair in some sort of protective style. As you can see, I love to do some braids. These are chunky knotless braids. I like to do the normal knotless braids, and that leads us on to the next bit. My favorite sort of protective styles to do would be, again, the knotless braids. No matter what size I go for, they're just actually amazing, and they're much lighter on the hair, as you can see, because it starts from your actual root and then you add the braiding hair afterwards. It gives you less tension on your edges, which means that you're not able to pull them out as much in comparison to if you were going to do normal braids, and they actually are just quite cute and quite trendy at the moment. Another one of my favorite things to do are crochet or individual locks. They are really lightweight. They're not the same as, for example, using actual braiding hair and wrapping it with Marley. It's so lightweight on your hair, you basically feel as though you have nothing in it. You've got a nice protective style, especially for the colder months, because England decided to switch up on us and it is freezing now. So with the dreads or the locks, your hair is completely wrapped around and it's completely covered. So you know your ends aren't getting dry, you know your hair's not tangling up on itself, and you just know that the moisture is really staying in there. Another style I'd recommend would be the normal crochet style, where you cane roll your hair up and add extra hair, different kind of styles that you can do. There's loads of girls that are doing it amazingly, and also wigs. As long as you can do them properly and you're making sure that it's not rubbing on your edges, they're good to go. It's a great protective style for hair, especially if you're just trying to keep your hair really moisturized. The next tip, if you can learn to do your hair yourself, that is the best thing. This is more like a money saving hack. Like, if you've got the money, girl, do your thing. Like, I wish I could just pay someone to do my hair. But once you learn how to do your hair by yourself, because you're most likely not going to be with your hairdresser every single day, it's really good just to know what your hair likes, just in case something like another pandemic happens or we go back into lockdown. You know at least how to take care of your hair with the basics, and you know exactly what to do. So try your best if you can. Try different hairstyles out, try out different methods, and loads of different things might work for you. Some things might not, but use YouTube, because YouTube is your friend. You don't have to just watch me. You can watch other people, but really learn or try your best to get to know what your hair likes and what your hair doesn't, so you can save yourself a few coins. Another thing that I think is definitely going to help you maintain your hair growth is a bonnet. A bonnet or a headscarf. I got this from Hall Fair Accessories on Instagram actually, and it's really large. That's my favorite thing about it. It can even hold these extra long braids that I've got going on over here. A protective cap or a protective silk headscarf or satin or silk pillowcase is the perfect thing. That's going to help you maintain your hair growth because it's going to allow your hair when you're sleeping to avoid rubbing against any hard materials like cotton or polyester. So because of how slippery it is on the inside, when your hair comes into contact with silk or satin, it glides over it instead of rubbing over it. And that's also going to eliminate a lot of things. It's going to decrease how many split ends you get. It's going to decrease also losing any moisture like your hair would usually use when put up against a material like cotton, because cotton absorbs. You also don't want to use things like tights. Been there, done that. That does cause further breakage that you can actually use to avoid. So get something silk or satin, and it's going to really make sure you see the difference. You're going to notice your hair being a lot shinier and a lot more manageable when you wake up in the morning. And last but not least, just have fun with it. I know it sounds like natural hair has so many rules, but to be honest, you don't have to follow the rules. But if you do want to get your hair to a nice length, or if you want to get your hair in a nice healthy position, you do need to make sure you are doing some of the minimum requirements. But to be honest, it's your hair, you can do whatever you wish with it. Natural hair is fun because it's versatile, it can form itself in different shapes, different positions, and it's just amazing. And thank you so much guys for watching. I hope I haven't blabbered on too much, and I hope that actually made some sense. But if you guys want to see a part 2 or you have any questions, pop them in the comment section down below and I'll get straight to it. But thank you so much for watching guys, and I hope you are blessed. Ciao.